Francesca Simo. I am the author of many books, but you probably know me best as the author of Horrid Henry. And I'm very pleased to be welcoming you all to Cressida Creativity Summer Camp. So I hope everyone's in the mood to get creative. And to help you all, I'd like to give you a few writing tips and talk about ideas and share with you how I got the ideas for some of my books. So I hope there's lots of budding writers out there and big readers. So first of all, if you want to write a story, you need to think about that story as a journey. Think about where your characters are at the beginning and where they end up. So the middle bit would be the twist. How does your character go from, let's say, being, poor and unhappy to rich and happy, which is the story of Cinderella. So the twist in the middle is how she gets there. But the other thing to do is to always ask yourself questions, which is, what does your character want? And that is the big one. Characters always have to want something. They have to, let's say it's a dinosaur who wants to breathe fire, or someone like Horrid Henry who just wants his way. They always have to want something, and there's always something or someone or even themselves that's stopping them getting what they want. So one of the ways that I always build a story is to ask myself questions. Who's my character? Why are they this? Why do they want what they want? And to think about how they end up different in some way at the end than they were at the beginning. So that's the kind of basic idea. A really great way to start a story is dialogue. You want to get right in there and to listen to your characters. How do they speak? My characters all talk to me, but sometimes I'm not paying attention. And one of the keys to writing a good story is to listen to your characters. Also to keep an ideas notebook and write down any little idea that happens to you, because a fun way to build a story is to combine ideas that don't seem like they're connected. So if you have a bunch of different ideas, see how you can combine them. Another way to get ideas for stories is to think about all the different types of stories that exist, like animal stories or family stories or school stories or sports stories or fantasy or comedy. There's loads of different types of stories, ghost stories, mystery stories, family stories, and combine them. So, for example, let's say you wanted an animal sports story. Well, you could do a story about an animal sports day or an alien detective mystery, anything. But just think about the different types of stories and try to combine two odd ones, a ghost romance. So that is a kind of way of kind of surprising yourself, not always writing the same thing. Because ideas are absolutely everywhere, and it's very easy to get an idea, and it's very easy to start a story. But one of the things you absolutely must do is when you start your story, you have to finish it. Because so many people will start a story and then they just give up because it gets hard. So if you get stuck, think about how your character is different at the end than the beginning. Think about what they want and what's stopping them getting what they want. And kind of move on from there. But a really good way to think of creative ways to do different types of stories is to think about how you can combine, the more unlikely story, the better, I always find. And that's the way you'll come up with something really creative and unique to you. So let me tell you a little bit about my books. I will start telling you about Horrid Henry, which started off as, this is my most recent book, Horrid Henry, Up and Away. And I started Horrid Henry 25 years ago, and I never thought it would be more than one story. I wasn't thinking about it as a series. I just wanted to write about families where there was a good child and a bad child. And I'm the eldest of 4 children, and I always wanted to be an only child, and I'm very aware of how annoying it is as the eldest to have younger brothers and sisters bothering you all the time. And also that it would be quite funny to have a character whose idea of heaven was if he could be emperor and rule the world. So I got the name Horrid Henry because I love alliteration, and I was thinking about somebody who was horrid. And so a name that went, there's not that many names actually that begin with H, so I did Horrid Henry. And that kind of started me off on my characters rather than my story, because I thought, well, if he's horrid, it would be good to have somebody to fight against. So there's a bit of drama in my story. So I thought, well, if one character's horrid, the other one has to be perfect. So I thought Horrid Henry, Perfect Peter. So I immediately came up with my 2 characters. And it basically grew from there. And what I did was I thought about all the ordinary things that happen to everybody. You know, losing a tooth, school sports day, having injections. And I asked myself the question, what would Henry do? How would he handle it? And sometimes I imagine him and Peter in one room just fighting. And it makes me laugh a lot. I get to use some of the names that my brothers used to call each other, like Poopsicle, and thinking up names like Worm, and they're a lot of fun to write because I'm not really a very Horrid Henry type person. So I enjoy having fun with him, and I think families are quite funny. So I started out writing one story, and I've just finished the 100th story, which was Horrid Henry and the Zoom of Doom. And that was a story about a water slide roller coaster, because I'm scared of roller coasters. And I once got in a queue at a water park, which I thought was for a really easy, low slide, water slide, and it turned out to be the scariest one that you had to wear seatbelts for, and a huge drop. And it was horrible and nightmarish, but I thought maybe I'll get a Horrid Henry story out of this, because I do get ideas for, like, when things happen that aren't great. I think, okay, what would Henry do? What would he be like in this situation? So somehow I've done, I've got ideas from things that happened to me, things that happened to my son. One of my favorite stories is Horrid Henry Meets the Queen. And I got that idea because I was on the tube and I picked up an old newspaper, and there was a picture of this little boy who was about 3 screaming. So I thought, ooh, what's going on? And this little boy was screaming because Prince Charles had visited his nursery. And in the paper it said he screamed, I hate Prince Charles, make him go away. And I thought, gosh, wouldn't it be funny if the Queen came to Henry's school? And then I asked myself the question, what does Henry want? And Henry wants to know how many TVs the Queen has. And that's like the whole motivation throughout the whole story. It's him trying to get close enough to the Queen to ask her the question, how many tellies does she have? But in addition to Horrid Henry, I've also written a lot of picture books and some older books. And the most recent picture book is a book called Hack and Whack, because I did medieval studies at university and I love Vikings. So I thought it would be very funny to write some stories about squabbling Vikings. And also, as we all know, Vikings were pirates. And the one thing Viking parents would absolutely hate more than anything in the world would be to have goody-goody children. They want children who are going to be pirates, who are going to be ferocious and fight and steal and run wild. So it was a real chance to write something kind of wild. And I do like history, and I do like Vikings. I've also written some books for older kids, and this is my favorite. It's called The Monstrous Child, because I love mythology. And The Monstrous Child is the story of Hel, the Norse goddess of the dead, who is half human and half corpse. And she rules the underworld. And this was a strange story for me because her voice came into my head one day, and I knew I had to write her story. And it was the first time I'd ever written in first person. And so that was quite an intense story to write. But I think you can hear from what I've said that I write a lot about the things that interest me, and I like comedy, and I love mythology, and I like Vikings, and a lot of my books are about those themes. So I would urge you to write what interests you, write what you're curious about. I like to write my stories to find out what's going to happen. I don't usually know. And you don't know where it's going to take you. Just finish what you do. So have a fabulous summer. Do lots of good writing. Make sure you get a notebook. Write your stories down. Finish them. And also remember, it's great to read because you get so many ideas from books that you read. So goodbye all, and happy reading and very much happy writing. Bye.